Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So, welcome to what I'm currently calling Planet Zoo Puttering. Similar to if you've seen the other series I kind of have started, Planet Coaster Puttering. I'm playing with both of these at this point, just trying to get familiar with them. And just seeing where it goes, and hopefully it'll be compelling enough content for people to tag along and see. So I'm in sandbox mode here. I've poked around enough. I've done several career scenarios all the way through, done pretty well, and as with Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo, I'm going to go ahead and try to kind of build what I know, because that's really what everybody's talking about. So I spent some time here, and I'm going to show you a little bit of this to begin with, of how I built this, but I'm going to be trying to kind of recreate as much as I can the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo, which is the nearest zoo to where I'm at right now. Been there a few times. Been many years since I've been there, so and I know they've added some things here and there. I've done what I can to find pictures of things that make sense. So you can see the picture of the sign here, the original one, so hopefully you feel I've done a decent job in recreating it. Obviously we're putting it above the path instead of next to the path. Part of that is just because with the lettering available in the game, to try to fit things on there. Took a little bit of space, but figured this kind of looked nice as well. So before I get into the next thing that I'm really going to focus on here, let's just take a quick look at this sign. So you can see here, it is a object that contains 46 objects. So if I go ahead and kind of ungroup this, we've got a bunch of letters. We've got, 3-letter types back there. I've gone ahead and used the East Asia painted timber squares and colored them there. Also used the East Asia unpainted timbers and the horizontal wooden plank walls. And then this up here is made up of several Planet Zoo primitive circle halves that I've kind of overlapped a bit and gone ahead and worked with that. So I've got it saved as a blueprint. It might be one of those things, I guess. I'll see if I ever upload it to the Steam Workshop or something. Don't know how useful this will be to other folks, but that's what I spent a good amount of time doing, and I didn't film that because at that point I really didn't know what I was going to be doing and if I was going to go forward. But at this point I've certainly gotten enough interest in these sims that I've decided, I'm going to give it a go. So the thing I'm going to focus on now is, let me zoom out a bit, but I'm going to focus on the gift shop, which kind of really in the actual zoo is almost attached right here, but we'll put it here somewhere off to the side. And so I'm going to go ahead and build that out at this point. And that will be the focus, I believe, of this episode. So I'm going to start building here. And you can see I'm going to go ahead and place some shops into the gift shop here, because obviously we want our sims to be able to go in and purchase some things. So the challenge I have is I'm certainly less familiar with this tool than probably other folks out there, so I was trying to figure out what looked best, and I know it had a little bit of a wooden feel on the outside, so eventually I settled on this. And then you can just place these along the edge of the building pretty easily. You just rotate them with Z, turn it around, and so I just put an edge around the building. And once I set things up, I needed to kind of really position things and make everything look nice and snug. So moving some walls out, adding a couple extra to fill in spaces. And at this point I think I was pretty good. Now I need to just get the shop fronts in. Obviously internally it looks a little bit different. I've determined I had a little bit of a gap there in the center, so went ahead and filled that with a small piece. So overall there, pretty good. Then we need something above the entryway. Determined that 2 meter piece was too big. Went down to 1 meter, shrinking the grid because I was having some difficulty. Still couldn't really line it up at the top, but did the best I could, knowing that the roof line's probably going to hide some of that because there's only so much granularity the game seems to give. So I think I went to the roof next, trying to figure out what worked best, and I think I ended up with slate, and it was dark enough to begin with, so just kind of stuck with what the default in the game was once I determined what I wanted to do. So played around, as you can see, with several different types and eventually settled on that. The front has a little bit of an overhang, and I know it kind of goes across as well, so get that set up, link that together, and then obviously in the back, because I have 2 shops, I had a bit of a challenge. So gone ahead and tried to play with these roof panels, and once again they try to align to the surface, so you can only go up and down so much, trying to give it a realistic look, or a reasonable look at least, and trying to recall what I was trying to find then. Understanding how the camera moves is something I was struggling with, so sorry for a lot of the jumping around. So at this point, doing the front and figuring out the timber work on the front was what I was starting, but then I determined, well, the front has windows, so let's go ahead and get windows set up. That seemed like an easy win. And then the next piece, because it's an African theme, I think I went ahead and did the trim at the top. Yeah, I'm actually trying to get those gables figured out. So once again, just trying to play with the positioning in the game. Getting these done. Have to keep, you can see there's a 4 meter grid there. Then I think I go back to the 1 meter grid, so it just continued to be a bit of challenge, fighting with the placement. And then I've got those 2 little wings. So the smaller gable didn't really work, and then I found these angular pieces that seemed to fit the bill pretty well. So at this point I've kind of got all the walls. There's finally the African theme that I found, and I think you'll see when I pull up the picture at the end again that it actually matched pretty well. So you can then go ahead and work with the timbers. So the challenge here was figuring out the best thing to do, and then I just went with raw wood. Initially I was playing with maybe painting and changing colors, so kind of duplicating those over. And then the challenge is up along the roof line. There's also kind of a structure. The beams are too long. Determine here that you can use some smaller ones. Again, the camera is my enemy right now, so I was definitely having a lot of difficulty under here. So putting a couple of those together, using the advanced move to stretch them out, copied it over. For some reason the copy then, the third copy or second copy I guess, flipped it, and I'm like, alright, I'll put it on the other side. Now I'm just trying to get everything aligned. Again, the camera is, I'm just trying to get a good view So hopefully over time I'll learn how to use the camera a little better, if there is such a thing. And then, again, I didn't mean to go run all along the grass, but that was just fighting with the camera, trying to get an angle where I can see what I've got there. I then realized I was doing one piece on the other side instead of copying both beams, and so that's why I was struggling with making it all fit. So it was driving me a little crazy as to why things suddenly couldn't stay symmetrical. And then I determined the roof was too high. I needed to lower it to get it down onto the wood. So I'll go ahead and take that roof line. Again, fighting with some alignment, doing the best I can, because again, it won't let me quite do it perfectly, but gets pretty close. I think the back ended up being a little bit off, and I think ultimately, same thing here, I'm trying to make that one piece vanish. I could not find a way to do it. Ultimately determine it's the back of the building. I think I'll leave it alone and go from there. So now we're back at the front, and then looking at the photo, I realized I've got some work at the top that also exists. So there's some cross beams, and I guess I'll call it a sunburst pattern that kind of goes through. So got to get that center piece in there, and then some 245-degree beams that appear. So going from a 2 meter to a 1 meter, again fighting with the camera. Was able to go ahead with the 1 meter, and that worked out pretty well. Fit in perfectly. Rotated it 90 again. Got that set up, and then I can duplicate that structure back to each of them, and that should then give me what I need. Then I noticed there was something at the bottom of the beams, and this trick I've seen other places, so cannot claim coming up with this on my own, but kind of repositioning those after burying those fountains in the ground. And then in the photo I had, there's a planter over here, tried to get the color together and something reasonable into the planter, so picking temperate zone, something that at least would be in Ohio. And then finally the little signboards are in the photo there. Oh, that's right, before I do that, I was trying to put a floor in because I didn't like the path pieces, but ultimately I was worried about clipping of feet, and I couldn't really, for some reason, get them lined up. It would not let me with the up and down, and I think I've ended up scrapping this idea and just saying I'll deal with the path. I think I tried to redo the path for a second. So yeah, you can see trying to do that, and I do have curbing off, if you'll notice, but somehow it kept putting it in periodically. So after fighting with it for a little while, I realized I'd been beaten, and ultimately thought, well, I don't know that anybody, I might not win awards for absolute realism, but I think it was pretty good in any event for what we've got put together. So you can see here, there's the signboards, and here's kind of what everything looks like compared to the original. So I think it was pretty good. And then I realized there was some things right in front as far as pavement, but I couldn't get it to work on the other side. Alright, so here I've got the example of the picture to give you kind of that final view. I did realize at the end here, there's some timbers along the top that I neglected to put in, but that would require me raising the roof line back up and playing with all that again, so I'm not sure. Maybe one of these days I'll fix it, but at this point I think this is actually good enough to kind of at least give me semblance and resembling of what's happening. So the final challenge I've got is, as I continue forward with the zoo, there's not a lot of buildings in the Cleveland Zoo, and there's certainly nothing that's incredibly wonderful or unique. And so the biggest challenge is, I think everyone needs to be aware, I'm going to do what I can and try to make this as much of a homage to what we've got as I can, but a lot of it's going to be habitats, and even in the habitats, they're pretty plain. I mean, it's run by the Metroparks system, which is a great system, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be competing with something like the San Diego Zoo or something like that I think is world-renowned for its habitats and scenery and so forth. I mean, they certainly do a great job with what they've got. The other thing I had done, I think, between the quick time lapse of building the shop is I determined I moved the sign up. I think it was down here toward the back end, and realized, well, I need to pull this in. So that gets us complete with the gift shop here. And so I am going to wrap up with this episode, and I hope to see you next time.